So how many people would agree that this has been the best Olympics ever? So, you know, they always say that at the end, and it's often not really true. Some of them have been dinky. It was absolutely true in London. But for the Grand Challenges meeting, I think the consensus is this was really the best ever. And the reasons are very obvious. We have so many talented people. We have the two groups. We have collaborations. We have great ideas. We have added a mix of interesting things. We've got the community coming together. So I agree with you. This is the best. We have a really great panel this afternoon to close off. We have Sir Gus Nossal, who I've known since 1981 when I was a graduate student in Oxford. He has been the director of one of the best research institutes in the world, the Walter and Eliza Hall Institute in Melbourne. He's worked for a long time and chaired many of the activities at the World Health Organization. He's been the chairman of the Strategic Advisory Council of the Bill and Melinda Gates Children's Vaccine Program, and he's been on the Scientific Advisory Board of both the Gates Foundation's Grand Challenges Initiative and Grand Challenges Canada. And now he's chairman of the Gates Discovery Expert Group. So he's an incredibly talented person, somebody who's been in the game of Grand Challenges right from the beginning. Then we have Mwele Malecela, a fellow Tanzanian. Very proud to have her here. She's the Director General of the National Institutes for Medical Research in Tanzania and the Chief Research Scientist of the Medical Parasitology section with a focus on lymphatic filariasis, an area that she leads the national program on eliminating filariasis and does that also at the international level. She is the president of the Global Alliance to eliminate lymphatic filariasis and a lot of other important international functions. And for the purposes of today's meeting, she's been a very valuable member of the Scientific Advisory Board of Grand Challenges Canada. And then we have Christine Debouck. We've worked together now for, I think, about 8 or 9 years. Christine is a molecular biologist with expertise in drug research and development, and she was director of HIV research at SmithKline Beecham, and then went on to become director and vice president of the Division of Biotech and Genetics at SmithKline Beecham, senior vice president of the Division of Genomics Research, also at GSK, and then now she's president of Ardennes Biosciences, where she advises on drug discovery and biomarkers for pharmaceutical and biotech companies. And she has also been a member of the Scientific Advisory Board of both the Gates Grand Challenges Initiative and also Grand Challenges Canada. So 3 people, let's give them a hand. Great people to have on board to finish off. So we're going to have a panel discussion, no slides, and there are 3 questions that I'm going to put to them, and I'm putting them to you now also because after they have made their contribution, I'm going to open it to the audience so that we can hear your views. And those 3 questions are, 1, what is your view of how far the Grand Challenges movement has come? Secondly, what can be done to make the Grand Challenges approach even more effective in solving global health challenges? And third, where would you all like us to take the Grand Challenges movement into the future? What would you see this movement as being, say, in 2019, or if you wish, 2020? So I'm going to ask the panel the first question, and you don't need to answer each of these questions. You can choose which of the 3 you want to answer. But the first one is, what is your view of how far the Grand Challenges movement has come?
Thanks, Abdallah. I'm going to tackle your first question. Grand challenges moving forward. What a subject to address. As you said, Abdallah, I've had the good fortune to be in on this from the very beginning. And I must say, it's exhilarating to see the Grand Challenges brand expanding and diversifying both geographically and conceptually. Now, what have we learnt from the original Grand Challenges in global health? First, that it's possible to lure new players into the global health field, including Nobel laureates and highly distinguished scientists never before involved in development. Second, that one can build complex, interdisciplinary, intercontinental partnerships which work effectively and unselfishly, though I personally believe that some of the original $20 million grants may have been too large, rendering the structure somewhat cumbersome. Thirdly, that 5 years is really not a very long time to give birth to a truly novel invention. Finally, that strong ethical and sociological input, such as provided by your group, Abdallah, is immensely valuable. Well, what then have we learnt from Grand Challenges explorations? That modest sums can fertilize a host of well-focused initiatives and draw out from the world scientific community an amazing array of bright and even outrageous ideas, some of which are already paying dividends after a very short time. And also that the portfolio of acute and urgent needs is much larger than envisioned in the original 14 fields of endeavour. And what have we learnt from Grand Challenges Canada and the nascent proposals from Brazil, India, Thailand and Israel? That, as in great music, a theme can be adorned by variations, by subtle shifts of emphasis, nuanced elaborations of the original concept, which lend richness. Also, that participants from developing countries can make essential primary contributions. And finally, that even global programs have regional components with particularities warranting detailed attention. Now, what does all of this mean for the future? As we tick off the countries jostling to join the Grand Challenges bandwagon, we must surely reach the conclusion that global health is an idea whose time has come. To that end, we must all work hard to strive for that continuum of endeavour which has formed the central core of this meeting. Namely, that linking of hands between science, commercial development, creative financing and market penetration, requiring inspired input from public and private sectors to equal degree. Abdallah, our message is a noble one. It must reach from the highest levels of government and industry to factory workers and humble villagers. Global health is one of humanity's greatest aspirations. The challenge must be embraced not just for humanitarian reasons, but as a powerful force for justice, equity, stability, and peace.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gus. Mwele, you can address either that same question or any of the other two.
Well, how can I touch that?
It's difficult.
It's very difficult to follow up, but when the one thing that I will take from his from Gus's initial comments, Victor Hugo's statement that nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come, and this is really the time for global health. And from my short experience with particularly Grand Challenges Canada, I was involved in the Arusha meeting of Grand Challenges, and I can see that we have come a long way. And my view is a long way in the sense of looking at the way the ideas have evolved. So in Arusha, some of the ideas were not, that were being discussed, I didn't quite feel had the touch, the ground touch to them. But at this meeting, I could see how almost every single idea had the end in sight. And for me, that is what has really touched me and made me feel that this is really making a difference. Because we are looking at the end, we're looking at how it is possible to get point-of-care diagnostics to the village level, how it is possible to avert the maternal deaths that are happening, how it is possible to care for a mental patient in a village in Tanzania or Bangladesh. So all this, for me, is something that really brings the reality home that these are good science for global health solutions.
Terrific. Christine.
Thanks, Abdallah. A great opportunity to contribute to this initiative since we met at WHO back in 2001 and you invited me to participate. So it has been a great privilege. What I wanted to do is actually, my expertise is applying molecular biology to drug discovery. And when I saw the tracks about drug discovery, I said, that's where I'm going to go and listen. So I learned more about my own expertise. And I said, well, I should not do that. I'll go and learn about the other tracks. And I walked in the presentation that has just started. It was Gail Turner talking about her projects with the Inuit. And the title of her talk is actually very inspiring and very meaningful for two of the topics. Her talk was about nothing about us without us. And she was talking about the Inuit. So first thing is, in the last several years, initially we saw scientists who were primarily from the rich countries getting engaged and totally motivated with their innovation in topics of relevance to the developing countries. But as they start working on this, they realized they could not really go all the way without the participation of the local people. So initially it started where the people from developing countries were passive subjects of research. And now we see in most of the projects that they are active participants as scientists, as healthcare workers, as social members of communities, and even now emerging as businesses. So I think this is a fantastic evolution over the last few years that we have seen little by little, and I think it just got very crystallized at this meeting. Then the other thing about the Inuit presentation is I think all of us need to think about global health is not just about the health in the developing world. There are people who are totally underprivileged in very rich countries. And the topic about the health of Inuits actually brought that into very clear focus. And also now global health, the healthcare in the US, in Canada, in Europe, a lot of people can no longer afford, and it's even people who are very comfortable. Who would be able to afford to pay $300,000 for a treatment per year for cystic fibrosis? If you have a child with cystic fibrosis in the right mutation, you will bankrupt yourself so that you can pay that $300,000, even though some of it may be reimbursable. So there are a lot of lessons that we can learn, and some people have called it the reverse innovation, but we need to think on the global scale. There's global warming, so the malaria may be coming back towards the north, as it was in the past. And I think that that's something very important for where we are going with this initiative for 2020, even 2030.
Thank you very much. Maybe for 30 seconds each, starting again with Gus. What can we do to make the Grand Challenges approach even more effective?
Well, I think that this extra breadth with focus that we have seen through the Grand Challenges explorations and through Grand Challenges Canada was an improvement on the somewhat stylized 14 identified from on top Grand Challenges. And I'd like to see this continue. I think what I've learnt in the last few years is just how many urgent needs there are. And the second thing, which I'm sure we all have already in our hearts was encapsulated by Christine's phrase, nothing about us without us. You know, I have been impressed with the brilliant partners that one finds not only in middle-income countries, but in poor developing countries. If you network your way to the right people, there are brilliant and dedicated people in every country in the world. And putting those right up in front as equal partners in the grand challenges, well, I think it's becoming mandatory, and I think it will be even more important in the future.
Thank you. Mwele, what can be done to make this approach even better?
As we move forward, Abdallah, I was beyond the proof of concept. Now, the issue of scale. And with the issue of scale comes a lot of things and a lot of issues. And that reality was brought to me this afternoon at lunch by a Canadian professor of engineering called Karim, who has developed a very low-tech digital X-ray machine. So we spoke, and I told him about the problems with issues of radiology in Tanzania. And I was saying, so when do you think your product could actually be taken to scale? He said, this afternoon. But, and the but was the interesting part. The but was about how he could make it profitable, and yet be able to have it for developing countries. How, and if he wanted to have it manufactured in an emerging economy, then he had to be guaranteed of bulk. So volume was the issue. So there are a number of issues along that trajectory, or along the continuum, which one needs to address. So just apart from the innovation itself, there are all these issues that one needs to look at. And I think as we move forward, these are the things that we need to take into consideration. And I've listed them down as PPPPs. And it's not public-private partnership. It does have partnership, but it starts with the product itself. The partnerships required to get the product up and running, and part of it is grand challenges. And if we look at the accelerator program and other groups doing venture capital, etc. And then it's the pathways. How do we really how does Karim get from his product, from his X-ray, to the field in Tanzania? And then eventually we have to look at the people. And so all these P's for me are the key routes towards getting moving forward, because we do have great ideas, they are there, but moving them now from that great idea to the field and the issue of scale is critical now as we move forward.
Thank you. Maybe with Christine we'll go to the third question and finish and go to the audience and then perhaps come back later. Where would the people in the room, including yourselves, challenge the Grand Challenges community to go in the future? Where would you like to see us in 2020?
Yeah, there are a couple of things, and the first one is some great movement is already happening. I think initially everybody was very, very focused on the big three. HIV, malaria, TB, huge effort. But there are all these other things. Actually, when these diseases are cured, we need to think about, what if they're out of the picture? What's happening? Because that may very well happen, and maybe it's 2020 or 2030, and all the non-communicable diseases. And, movement is happening already, and we have especially the initiative with mental health. Fantastic. We had a great couple of presentations on diabetes. And actually, the way it was presented, when you listened to one of the presentations, it was almost like if, in the context of the mother and passing certain things to the child and it perpetuated, to me it sounded like a communicable disease, as a matter of fact, because it just stayed and stayed and stayed. So I think that that's something that is very, very important. And sometimes it may not involve biomedical research. For example, something that, I don't want to trivialize it, but something like, focusing on water purification, access to clean water could make such a huge difference. And it's more engineering, but we may need to think about this, that it's not just about biomedical research. And then one aspect that I think is going to need tremendous creativity is the business aspect, and maintain the funding of these ideas, perhaps in an evergreen fashion, because the money from philanthropists is there, but maybe it's going to shrink, and we need to see how do we get into a self-sustainable model so that maybe a business will take place, and that business can kind of pay back and feed back into more research. And I think that's a very, very important aspect of the future.
Thank you. I'm now going to open it to the audience for about 10 minutes or so, and I'll read the 3 questions again, and please feel free to address any of them. What is your view of how far the Grand Challenges movement has come? Secondly, what can be done to make the Grand Challenges approach even more effective? And thirdly, where would you like to see the Grand Challenges community in 2020? So you have the opportunity now to have your say. Behind Peter Singer.
I really have something to say. I'm not just rescuing the audience, that there were no. So I just want to make a comment on others saying that nothing about us without us. I think Grand Challenges Canada effectively picked up on that idea with STARS program, and I really feel that my project is, I'm one of the Rising Stars, and I feel that what I do here is going to have an impact on how I live my life and how my children are going to live in this world. And this is very important to keep continuing this. I'm really discovering these new minds and bold ideas, and never underestimating the potential that we have in the young generation coming. And I think the best way to do this is when we really translate this or take this to our own families, to our own workplaces. And I want to give one simple example that we do in our university. My colleagues were inspired when I got the grant, Rising Star grant, and so one of my colleagues is now applying Grand Challenges application process as a teaching tool. So we are preparing the next generation of Rising Stars for you. They're, as a class assignment, they're doing 2-minute videos. You have to see the excitement that is going on around. And she invites me as a reviewer for those 2-minute videos. And I'm hoping that there will be more stars in my university, and we will have a panel of judging those beautiful videos, and I encourage many of them really to put forward real applications there. So thank you, Grand Challenges Canada. I see you going very far, and I want to come with you, and I want my 15 years old come with you.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
Fantastic. Ophira.
Thanks. First of all, I just want to say it's been an incredible few days, and the panelists here just speak to the breadth and scope of what's possible. I'm also a Rising Star grantee from the University of Toronto. My project is actually in breast cancer, so I might be the only oncologist in the room, I don't know. And that's what I wish to bring up as a future prospect for the Grand Challenges approach to consider the diagonal approach to health system strengthening by bridging, and not to sound so cliche about these divides, these silos, communicable, non-communicable. 26% of all cancers worldwide are caused by infections. And I'd like to even ask the panelists, where do you think cancer and other NCDs might actually fit within the framework? I think Grand Challenges Canada has made tremendous progress in this regard, and I was thrilled to be a cancer person in this room. But I'd like to see more of that. Thanks.
Terrific. Anyone else? Well, give you a little time to think while I go back to the panel. We haven't really grappled with this question. Where do you want to see the Grand Challenges movement in 2020? Gus?
Well, I'll have a go, Abdallah. There'd be 2 concrete things that I'd say. Much as I love my colleagues in all of the 3 areas of HIV, AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis, they aren't the be-all and the end-all of the world. And therefore, maybe aligning the Grand Challenges more to the global burden of disease would be a good idea. And I imagine many of the audience will know about the G-Finder project of Mary Moran's, funded by Gates, which seeks to ask how matched is the global effort in R&D with the actual expenditures on R&D in global health, and the answer is not very well. And there are certain areas of huge importance that are still somewhat undercooked, including, would you believe, diarrheal diseases, although we have good efforts here, but it's still not enough, and some of the parasitic diseases other than malaria. So I think some greater alignment of grand challenges with burden of disease. And the second point I'd make is, it's in my mind because my colleague from Melbourne, David Anderson, brought it up yesterday. We need more Grand Challenges Canada. We need to regionalize this thing in much the way that you have done. We actually need most of the countries in the world to join up with this Grand Challenges movement. Now, for us in Australia, where we don't have a Grand Challenges Australia, we should have, but we don't have it, it is such a natural thing for us to be looking for leadership in countries to our near north, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and struggling states like the Solomon Islands and Timor-Leste. And therefore, I think grand challenges could be truly global while having a multiplicity of regional foci, and that would make a package that would look pretty good by 2020.
Thank you. I should here say that Grand Challenges Canada is a baby. The parent was the Gates Foundation's Grand Challenges program, and we wouldn't be here without them. So they're the initiators, we're the followers. Your point is incredibly important. We need to involve as much of the world as possible to be focused on outcomes, to be nimble, to have priorities up front, to have peer review processes that are open, and to fund research for and with people whose lives are going to be touched by the conditions we're trying to address. So that's a great thing. Thank you very much. You'll be hearing from us about Australia. Mwele, where do you want us to be in 2020?
I'm biased, and so one of the things that I would like very much for Grand Challenges to focus on is getting more innovation from low and middle income countries, and to push for innovation in those areas. I think Grand Challenges Canada's Rising Stars is a very, very good opportunity for people to start coming up with ideas. And I have a story, but the time is short, but it's an interesting story of how we got some Tanzanian colleagues to get involved with the Rising Stars and how excited they were about it.
Tell us.
They were saying, well, you know, it's impossible to get proposals through without counterparts from the north, and it'll be very difficult. But I said, this is different. So let's all sit in this room and discuss ideas. So everyone came up with the idea, and some were started off by saying, it's a little crazy, but, and then went on to give the idea. And so all we spoke about for that afternoon was just ideas. And then they developed the ideas into proposals. Now whether those, and then they did their 2-minute videos, which was a source of a lot of excitement. But what we don't know is whether that worked, and if it did work, well, there'll be some very happy people who will keep this going on. But for me, to watch my colleagues come up with ideas and solutions for issues which were affecting our own people, that for me was the brilliance. And I think if we can see more of that by 2020, I think that would be the most beautiful thing that has come out of all this.
Terrific, thank you. I see we have 2 more people who want to make comments from the audience. Please.
Abdallah, it's Dan Carucci. I had the privilege of being involved in the Grand Challenges program from sort of the early days. And, you know, when we first set out, we had really audacious objectives to solve 14 Grand Challenges, or some fraction of those 14 Grand Challenges. And so the measure of our success was going to be whether a Grand Challenge was solved. The Grand Challenges program now has expanded beyond just the identification and the tackling of particular Grand Challenges, and it's broadened to maternal and child health and saving brains and things. So this begs the question, how do we measure the successes? How do we measure our success? How do we know that we are advancing in the right direction? How do we know that the investments that we're making are good ones? And I just would challenge the panel to perhaps share their thoughts about the ways that we should be thinking about measuring our successes. Because I think, you listen to individuals, and yes, our ultimate goal is to save women and children. However, there are going to be incremental advances up to that point, and how do we measure those advances, and what constitutes success?
Great. I'll park that and get a few more comments and then take it back to the panel. Please.
Yeah, thank you. So the question was what will be expected by 2020 and 20? Actually, I mean, it's an interesting idea of think about grand challenges Canada, grand challenges Australia, grand challenges Brazil, grand challenges Peru, okay? But I would really like to have a grand challenges of the world, where people from the world are really trying to address the problems with innovative solutions. So what I'm saying is, my idea is that really, I mean, most of us, even the ones that might be a little behind with this idea of funding scientists or innovation, could start following this same pattern of addressing solutions with science and innovation. There are lots of things that I learned which I think have been great in this experience, I mean, as being a grantee. The fact that, for example, is relatively simple applying, okay, because it's a lot of intention with a very interesting idea. Then you have this workshop in which you are able to see the other people that are applying, and then you have, for people, especially for young people that maybe they don't have much experience, or even for people that has experience but feel that, oh my God, this could be so difficult. So they have the opportunity of improving the idea, sharing with peers, and making it much better. So that process, plus the process of networking in each of the meetings, is something that I think should be shared and should be done in different places. So I really feel that this should be on the world, so I hope that more of our countries start getting into this. And I was so surprised, for example, when I was looking at where were the people, trying to count from the different parts of the world, and I was surprised that there were relatively very few people from Latin America. And most of the Latin American people were people that are not working in Latin America, but are working in U.S. universities. And the fact of having these involvements coming from the countries can help also with one of the barriers that sometimes we have, which is language, which doesn't allow us for applications. So I think that's another thing that we have to consider. And but I hope that for 2020 we can have these grand challenges of the world, and we can all together have global but also local solutions. So with that word global, this is what I think.
Fantastic idea. Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you. I would like to first thank the Grand Challenges Canada for organizing this beautiful meeting, and really we have enjoyed the whole 3-4 days of our stay here. I think what I wanted to say was also similar to the previous speaker, she just told. What I believe is there are a lot of social issues that are still unaddressed. We have the answer to them, but we have not addressed them. And there are a lot of things that need political will, and maybe apart from scientists who are doing research and finding the answers to the problems, we need more of politicians and the governments and maybe the leaders, maybe religious leaders, maybe social leaders, who can help us in taking these matters up. Suppose, if I give an example, like we believe that we need to empower women. Now, I come from Bangladesh, where I think somebody was also presenting that the rate of literacy among women is now higher than men, which is very good. But still, the women are under the influence of men. We are still living in a very male-dominated society, and even though the women earn for themselves, the money they have belongs to their husbands or the fathers or the brothers, whoever they are under the protection of. So these are some social issues that need to be addressed, although scientifically, but also I think what I wanted to suggest to see Grand Challenges in 2020 is to have a forum of scientists as well as politicians maybe who can address all the social issues apart from health issues and other problems to solve it together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another incredibly good point. Anybody else? Yes, please.
Good afternoon. Milton Weinberg, and I was going to try to do it. I'm from psychiatry at Columbia, and originally from Venezuela, and I'm also Brazilian. So, I'm a member of the world. So, she used the word beautiful, you use the word burden of disease, you use the word biased, and I am biased, and you use the word business. So I was trying to figure out how I'm going to do B's all along. I'm not going to be able to, but burden of disease, depression is up there. It's not B, it's a D. And we need to figure out before 2020 how to get there much better. And we need to be very biased at making sure that we do that. The problem is that the business model for interventions that are not pharmaceutical and that are not technology are very, very complicated. Because how do you sell psychotherapy? Who's gonna make it happen? And Nature has talked about that, and there's just people responding about that. So a lot of the innovations that we create in behavioral interventions have no business models to be integrated into the rest of the world. And we need help in figuring out how to do that, because we don't know, we're in our silo of academia. We don't have too much of that expertise, and I think that needs to be something that needs to be thought about, which is beyond its implementation science in a much more complicated way than how to implement the best way to draw blood and make sure that the nurses don't get infected with HIV, which is dramatically important, but in certain ways it's much easier to implement than what do you do with an intervention that nobody's going to be in the business behind it. When at the same time, some presidents in this world are measured by the jobs that they create. And in a lot of the implementation science that we're doing around the work that we do, we're asking volunteers or semi-volunteers to take the job to do task shifting, task sharing, without providing them with a job or providing them very little. And part of how countries that in low and middle income countries can grow is also about their population getting a little bit more income by the phenomenal work that they can do. And somehow we need to think of how to do that within the implementation science of non-technology interventions. And I don't have the answer. So for me, that's a challenge. I don't know how to do that. I'm hoping that we can figure out how to do that. So then people can be elected to be presidents longer.
Thank you, Milton. One last person? Oh, we have people on the other side. Please, yes. We'll have to truncate this because we need to get Professor Correa to tell us about the next meeting.
Hi, I'm Richard Lester, University of British Columbia, also one of the rising stars. I want to just commend again an incredibly stimulating meeting and approach. I kind of came in and it addresses some of the issues that while I was waiting in line were brought up, but having developed on behalf of with my colleagues in Kenya a program that we actually proved already in a clinical trial, and then we thought, and this was using technology, cell phones as well tell, and when we approached Grand Challenges, actually our Grand Challenge was the business model, the social integration, and reusing some of the Grand Challenges Canada structure of integrated innovation. And I think there's a lot of exciting technology, new technologies we see coming out, but there's also a lot of proven technologies that aren't being used because of the lack of business models and social integration and so on. And I'd just like to see, and I would commend the fact that actually it has been happening, but mechanisms, specific calls for integrated innovation on already proven technologies and approaches.
Thank you very much. We'll internalize all these. There's probably no time now to go back and address all of them, but we'll make note of them and try to address them. Siham.
Hello, my name is Santiago Ramon. I'm from the University of British Columbia. I'm also one of the Grand Challenges Canada grantees. This is kind of my own perspective. Up to back 1 year, or a year and a half more or less, my vision was kind of unidirectional. I have my training is I'm a biochemist and a molecular microbiologist. And now that I have joined the Grand Challenges Canada community, it's kind of my perspective is expanded. You realize that you have your social people, business model, and there is a lot to integrate and to connect. Answering your question about where I see Grand Challenges Canada in the 2020, I don't know how you can do it, that's part of your job. But I think is that you're going to generate a big number of new, passionate, innovative people that they are working in science, business models, social issues. And you have to take advantage of that. You have to be able to integrate all those people and to make them working together. Because that's what you're actually creating. You're creating this boiling pot of innovation and ideas. I don't know if one solution maybe would be creating a new program for people that is already inside the program, just with new innovative ideas in which you can integrate science and social perspective.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think we'll bring this part to a close now. I'll thank my panel. Thank you very much for your great contributions and for stimulating such a great discussion from amongst the audience. Thank you very much. I'm now going to invite Dr. Jaelson Correa and Steve Bucksbaum to come and finish off. And Dr. Correa is going to talk to us about the next meeting, and then Steve will close the meeting. Please.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
Speak from here? Sure, that'll work. Working? Yes. Well, it's been a fantastic event. It's been actually a grand meeting at this one, and it's setting actually very high standards that we will. It's a big challenge for us now to take it home as homework and do our homework, to have not only a good venue and a good organization, but also that's something I can actually guarantee, that the weather will be a little bit better and later on next year. But having said that, it's been fantastic to be here in Ottawa and be very glad that we made it. Grand meeting, lots of good science, and I was just trying to look for inspiration, and people talked about the PPPP and then the play around the bees, and I've decided to do something about what is a grand challenge. We all have challenges every day in our lives. And what makes a challenge grand? And I think, if you allow me, G for global. I think this word has been repeated here today very many times. And global in a way that the global solutions and the global problems and the global village needs to sit together like we are doing here and think about solutions. And R for research. I think one of the major drivers that make these grand challenges and the grand solutions grand is actually its excellence, research, good science based, and that's of course very important. But research itself won't solve all the problems. We need advocacy. That's A for advocacy. A for actually it's we as political beings need to carry the message on and really engage people in different levels of society to sort of sort those issues. And of course, we need novel solutions. We need novelty. We need new approaches. We also need new people and young voices that are speaking today. But also novelty, and by innovation, we try and create different answers from what we already have. And I think D is very important because we need to think global solutions beyond aid, and we need to focus on development. And I think that closes the grand challenges, the grand solutions in a way that frames it, envelopes it in a nice way. And of course, it will be a grand pleasure and to welcome you all in Rio de Janeiro next year.
Thanks, Gelson. So I guess I'm going to get the last couple words, and mainly what I'd like to do is thank you. Geraldson has promised us better weather for next year. I would say more generally, we aspire to make this a more useful engagement with each coming year. And so to that end, maybe I'll share with you what my thoughts are as to why we brought everybody together. And it really is two primary goals. The first is we aspired to have a meeting that was scientifically and programmatically excellent in providing opportunities for collaboration, and to a specific end that everybody here would walk away having learned something new or met somebody new in a way that it would actually accelerate their work. And the second thing that we really aspired to do in this meeting is to bring together the various funding partners, the stakeholders, the investigators, and whether it was in plenary sessions, in side meetings, or in the hallways, engage in a conversation of how this platform is evolving and how we can make it more useful and essentially more productive and efficient in delivering solutions. And so to that end, my plea or request to you is we'll be reaching out to you all in the next week or so and really asking you a number of questions about how we're doing, but particularly I'd like you to reflect against those two goals. And the goals of the meeting have evolved. Those aren't essentially the stationary goals for all time. But help us think about how we can do better and how in particular we might do better in the next meeting in Rio. With the one promissory, we'll have better weather. And then the second thing I will do to close, and I can see some people hiding in the back, it's really my privilege to be able to thank the team that really pulled this together. And it's always dangerous to list folks, so I'll start and really thank the three partners who actually pulled it together as organizations, which is Grand Challenges Canada, essentially the discovery team at Gates Foundation and others, and Global Health Strategies, which has worked in some sense in partnership with us. Of course, that's omitting a large number of organizations. But I also do want to particularly call out a couple of people, partly because they've really done an outstanding job, and partly because I know it embarrasses them. It's one of the privileges of actually having a little time on the stage. So I can see Josie hiding way in the back, and I'd like to ask Josie to stand up. And so, as everybody in the meeting knows, Josie is really the one who runs the show, and we've all been working with her and for her. But from our team, I'd particularly like to recognize Chelsea, who I think is hiding next to her, and Cadest, and really a host of others that have worked on the meeting in various and complicated ways. And from our Grand Challenges Canada partners, it's really Andrew and Ray and Lynn and others. And then any of you who have had side meetings or other key things helped organize, it's Liz and Chelsea and Sukriti and Alex on the Global Health Strategies team. Have to acknowledge the tremendous work that the track leads did, and all of you who are in tracks, that really is the heart and soul of the meeting. And probably in last thought, really have to thank Peter. Peter's been a great co-host. He's in some sense the embodiment of our host in Canada. He's an incredible talk show host. Yes. And so I'd ask you to thank Peter, and if you have the opportunity, I'd ask you to tweet your appreciation for the really outstanding work that he's done over the last 3 days. And with that, I think we'll bring it to a close until we do the joint Keystone session.